Okay, so we are now recording. Okay, so I am excited about this call. This is one of the calls that I think is among the most important. And the reason why is because what you measure will define your organization. It will define how your employees interact with the people who use your products. It will define what you optimize for. Whatever you measure, you will become. And so I think it's just really, really essential. And our speaker today, Amy Baglan, the way that I heard about her was from Bo and several other investors who described her as someone who understands and thinks about their numbers in a way that they thought was like absolutely right, like absolutely essential. And so I rolled into meeting her already with a tremendous amount of excitement and curiosity and respect for the way that she was approaching her numbers and then also a values-based approach. I gave you all an article to read about, the way that one thinks about one's numbers. And so I'm just really excited about this call. And so, Amy, thank you so much for joining us for the call. I really, really appreciate you being here. Everyone has seen your bio and your background, but I would love for you to say hi and then also tell us how you started MeetMindful. What is the origin story of the company?
Absolutely. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Nicole, thank you so much. That was really humbled by that introduction, and I really appreciate being invited here. And everybody who's going through this academy, this is really exciting, and I just commend all of you for taking the time and committing to this. What Nicole and her team have put together is really special, and I think you guys are making the right move with focusing on transformational technology and how you can help to, the rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so the work we're all doing together is part of a larger community. And so I just thank you, Nicole, for bringing us all together. I'll say a little bit about my story and then jump into talking about metrics and data. I'm originally from the Midwest, and I ended up spending about 10 years on the East Coast. And ever since my freshman year of college, I was always interning in small companies that were just getting started. And I hesitate to even call them startups because this wasn't San Francisco and this wasn't a thing. They were just new businesses that were getting off the ground. And I was really interested in advertising and sales and marketing. And so at a young age, I got into up and coming startups as a key player that was actually able to move the needle and make things happen. And I'm super grateful for that experience. I ended up joining as the first hire at a mobile marketing startup in New York City. And we cornered the DIY text message marketing industry in the mid-2000s before smartphones were really a thing, and found again that I loved growing something from nothing and was, had some skill for it. I never really got into the tech side. I can't code, but I am highly passionate about growing consumer-facing businesses. And along my journey in New York, I ended up going down my own spiritual path through yoga and meditation when I was in my mid-20s. And I remember feeling like something was really missing from my life. I ended up in all my apartments in New York living on a block that had a big church on it. And I remember, and I grew up going to church and stopped many, many years ago. And I never felt like it was really for me. And yet here I was in, 26 years old, looking at all these churches going, I kind of want to go inside and I don't know why. And what I realized was when I went to my first yoga class, that feeling that I had being in that group of people in that community that I grew to know and love, and laying in Shavasana at the end of class, I had the realization that what I had been seeking looking in those churches and wondering what was inside was that same feeling I was experiencing in these classes. And it just catapulted my journey into personal growth and exploration and mindfulness. And I was going, you know, like many of us who have been through this journey and not through, but started on this journey. I don't think many of us are finished. But for like many of us, I had a lot of struggles going on at that time. I had a lot of toxic friendships and relationships, and I wasn't very happy. I wasn't very fulfilled. I was certainly in the New York City rat race. And I, for years, had always wanted and craved like deep, authentic connection with people, and I wasn't getting it. And yet in these classes, and then in my meditation practice that I began shortly after I picked up yoga, I began to feel a huge shift in my ability to show up with more presence, to connect with other people more authentically, and to feel more fulfilled through all of those connections. And I started feeling a lot of those issues I've been dealing with just start to dissipate, and have the courage to make other decisions that were more purposeful and fulfilling for me. So that started my journey. And all throughout my story is different realizations and milestones where I discovered or experienced something around connection and authentic connection with people. Whether it be the person that I'm at the grocery store checking out with, or somebody that I'm in deep romantic partnership with, and everything in between. And so I got really passionate about spreading this work and not just experiencing it personally, but also bringing that into the world so that other people could have a similar transformational experience like I had in their own way. It doesn't have to look like mine. And decided that, you know, while I loved growing businesses and working for the company I was at, it wasn't fulfilling me, and it wasn't gonna, you know, fill my soul and make me feel like I was doing something in the world that was really contributing. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to that feeling.
Yeah, totally.
I remember I was going through a holistic nutrition program at the time for 6 months on the weekends, and I was surrounded by 1,200 like-minded people who believed in the power of mind, body, and spirit work, and using that to help transform lives. I also read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week at that time. And I think many of us have this story too. That book changed my life. I was like, oh, I should just quit my job and go travel and find my thing. So I did. Quit my job, let go of my equity, and bought a one-way ticket to India and traveled for a year. And in all of the cities that I went through in Asia, I kept dropping into like-minded communities of people. And it was such a strong catalyst for everything that came next. And I saw the power that happens when people come together with aligned viewpoints and worldviews, and what they're up to in the world inspires one another to be more and do more and give more in their communities and in the wider world, in, you know, and to the people that they want to impact.
Did MeetMindful come to you while you were in India?
So partner yoga came to me while I was in Thailand. And partner yoga was the thing that I ended up teaching and doing when I came to Denver. I moved to Denver 7 years ago and had this realization that nobody was connecting or talking or even looking at each other in the yoga studios I would go to. And I knew one person when I moved here. And so I thought it was very weird that there were all these people who had such clearly something in common in these studios, and they weren't talking to each other. So the first thing I did was started a events company called Yoga Date, and we did yoga events for singles. It was really fun. Lots of like vinyasa and vino and partner yoga speed dating and fun events like that. And they were all selling out. And it was through that experience and running those events for about a year and a half and hearing my customers' feedback and their, you know, horror stories about online dating, the fact that I also was having issues or trouble, I guess I should say, finding people on, at the time, like Match.com and OkCupid, who shared my worldview and I could really trust that they were gonna, you know, vibe with me. whether or not we ended up dating or not. I just wanted to be around like-minded people. And it was so difficult. And so through my own experience and then the Yoga Dates event experience led me to realize that there was a much bigger opportunity here to provide impact for people who are looking for, you know, partnership with somebody who shares that worldview. And I really believe when people come together with intention like that, that they can create a ripple effect that spans far beyond the impact in their own lives, but really begins to ripple out into the larger community. And it takes a really powerful force to do that. So that's what brought me to MeetMindful.
Great. And then could you share with everyone a little bit of sort of like, where is MeetMindful today?
Yep.
Like your status.
Yeah, and I'll take just a little bit, take us back to when it started. We launched a prototype in 2014, and then in 2015 launched an actual custom application. And so we've been at it for, this is our 4th year, and it actually truly operating. And right now we connect people digitally, for just many people I'm sure are familiar with dating services. We have an app and a web service, and people can connect over like-minded activities, values, practices through profiles that are much deeper than what we experience on your typical like Tinder or Bumble or Match profile these days. We really give people an opportunity to express who they are and what they're looking for and what they're all about in the world. And we're about 25 people now, the team. We closed our Series A earlier this year. And I'm not going to be able to divulge metrics, numbers themselves, but I'm happy to talk all about how we track our metrics. But we are in a period where we just launched a brand new app to replace our old app and old pricing model. And so we're getting ready to step on the gas again for growth. And we're also working on what our strategy is and what's next for the business, as the vision has always been to expand far beyond dating. And so I'm really proud and happy to say that 4 years in, we're finally beginning to work on that.
That's great. Yeah, I think one of my my favorite conversations with you was basically you said that the some of the feedback from the customers is like, don't get on this app till you're ready to get married. Because people really come with with like their intentions to have really mindful, deep connections. So it gets rid of a lot of the the left right fluff.
There's a lot of manifesting that happens.
Yeah. Well, so the thing that so everybody in this group, many of them are seed, pre-seed. Some of them haven't really decided what they're doing. And I was just really inspired also by that conversation where you and I had, where you sort of talked about how you thought about metrics and how you thought about, what to measure, and how you thought about, the balance between really having your finger on the pulse of the business, but then also being on the side of the humans who use the products. And so, for this crowd, that is really what they need to understand, is how they should approach it, because all of them are going to be going into, meetings with investors. They're going to be building their own businesses, and they're figuring out what it is that they should measure. And so I really felt like your perspective, and then also, I felt like you have a great deal of courage in the way that you approached your investors when you were like, what, we're going to measure what the people really want. And so if you could talk a little bit about that, I think it would be really helpful with the mind that you're talking to people who are all, where you were several years ago.
Yeah. The first thing I'll say is that no matter what metrics you're tracking, do it diligently and be as detailed as you possibly can, because what will set you apart from your peers and your competitors, especially as you're getting started, is deep knowledge of what's going on in your product and in your business, how it works, and what the customer journey looks like in terms of a sales funnel. And it doesn't have to be all about money, but what does the journey look like from the moment somebody either sees or hears about your product, signs up or grabs a free trial, and then goes all the way through the journey of using and engaging with your product over time, however long that may last. Again, no matter what you're tracking, having deep inside and out knowledge of how that works, and having, if you're not a data person, hire a person who is, because that's going to give you a leg up in the ability to speak to investors and team members and anybody else in a way that shows you really understand what you're doing. And I think that's what set us apart early on, before we started tracking the right metrics. So we started just looking at users and revenue. So how many people have signed up today, this month, etc., and how much money have we made? And for a while, that was all we really looked at all, because we thought, well, if we haven't raised a whole lot of money, we hadn't at the time, and none of our investors were pushing for us to track anything different. And this is just kind of like, we were young and naive, and in many ways we definitely still are. But at the time, we didn't know better of what to track. And so we just kept tracking the things that were really obvious to us: user growth and revenue growth. And what we were missing was all the stuff that people actually care about. The quality of people signing up in the community, the level of engagement. So are they liking one another? Are they sending one another messages? Are they replying back to people? Are they coming back to the app? You know, are they trading contact information, which for us is a huge indicator that people are about to meet up, or at least contact one another offline to do so. And then all the way down to what sort of impact are we making? Are people creating relationships? Are those relationships higher quality than the relationships they've had in the past, because presumably they've met somebody who they're more aligned with? We were missing all of that. And those came over time, and they all came at different points in our journey. I'll fast forward to the last year when we began to speak with Bo Shao, who Nicole mentioned, who's now our lead investor and lead board member, who, you know, we met each other and we were both really aligned in what we're up to in the world. And he was the first investor to say to us, you know, the money that you guys are making is great for the short term, but if you're going to build a really sustainable, healthy business for the long run, you got to care about and track and optimize for more than that. And at first we were like, oh, really? Someone's going to actually let us do that? Because all of our investors before, as you remember, were like cheerleaders for how much money we were making. And that feels really good. And you're building a business and you have a startup and you're like, you guys are crushing it and making so much money. Like, look at that month-over-month growth. It is addictive. And so to have somebody come in who clearly is somebody that we wanted to work with, that said, you need to look at other stuff here. I like how you guys are running your business and how diligent you are about this, but you really need to look at other stuff. It was a huge breath of fresh air. So we began to track. He actually asked us a great question that we immediately went and did a bunch of research on. He said, can you find out, first identify your biggest customer success metrics, and I'll take you guys through what those are in a moment. And can you find out how quickly you need to grow in an area in order to increase those success metrics? And we said, yeah, we can figure that out. And my data guy went to work, and about a week later, we came up with the answer, which was a specific growth rate or higher increase our biggest success metrics in specific geographic areas. And we had enough data, enough data to work with to actually know that this was statistically significant, and that it's something that was not just in one market, but showed the same pattern in multiple markets. And we thought, okay, cool. So knowing this, double down in specific markets and watch these rates rise up even more. And that's when we started looking at the success metrics. And so that was a really big shift for us. And to have, the interesting thing was, and I think this is true for most businesses, when you focus on the success metrics, usually the growth numbers go up anyway. And so that for us was really, it was great to see that it's not that we're going to focus on the things that our customers want the most and then revenue is going to tank. But it's a paradigm shift in how we started to look at things. And those metrics were the first, well, I'll take you through what we track now because we've expanded it. But we look at, the first thing we look at is the profile score of somebody on their first day and also a week later. We've developed a custom profile score that says how much have they filled out and what have they put in it and how great of a fit are they for our network. Because when somebody signs up on MeetMindful and they put up a photo and then they say like one quick sentence, everybody else who sees that profile feels let down. They feel like bummed that this person hasn't divulged more about themselves, why they're here, what their values are, and it doesn't feel good for the other members, and it doesn't feel good for us. So, and we also believe that for the person that doesn't fill out their profile, they're actually not getting much out of it either, because other people think they're not committed and they don't want to talk to them. So it's a lose-lose-lose situation. So we track profile score first, and we have a number of stories or, you know, to-do items in the development queue to increase that profile score. It was a big focus of ours last quarter. So we track profile score. We track the number of likes and then mutual matches. So I like you like me back, per session. So that's not tracking the total number of likes on the network or the total number of matches, because those are just vanity metrics as far as we're concerned. We track number per session per user, because that should, to me, if I put myself in someone's shoes, when I go on to MeetMindful, what value have I gotten in that session? You know, did I find people that I was interested in, and or did I match with somebody I'm interested in? And how often does that happen for me? How often does that happen as on a percentage basis for the network? So that's a big one that we track. The number of people, and that also, by the way, is that allows us to work on algorithmic stories and story or to-do lists. I keep calling it stories, so those are development tasks. But it's why we work on better matching algorithms. So those numbers I just mentioned go up. The number of people who run out of matches for the day, we have a cap on how many matches you can look at as a free member per day. And if you hit that, if you hit a state where it says you've run out of matches, then that's something that we track as well, which means that somebody went through all their matches. We track three-way conversations. So that doesn't mean we're saying how many messages have people sent out. We're saying, Nicole, if I see you, I write you a message, you reply, and then I write you back. And we actually borrowed that from OkCupid because it was one of their main metrics that they track. And it makes a lot of sense. That's value. It's I saw you, you saw me, like to the point where we're now engaged in a conversation. So three-way conversations are big. And then the last thing that I'll mention is we track deleted reasons. And so when people delete their account, we want to capture and find out why they're deleting. And if they're deleting because they met somebody, or you know, they're taking a break, or they found a bug and they were really frustrated and they wanted to get off MeetMindful, or they met somebody outside of MeetMindful, whatever it is, we want to know that. And we use that data on a regular basis, and we create goals around that data too. So those are some of the things that we look at, and it's been a game changer for the team. Now I think it can feel really empty to be chasing revenue growth and user growth all the time. And so this is an opportunity for our team to get more engaged with what feels good to them and actually connect their work to something that means more than just looking at numbers go up and to the right.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess, you know, for people who are just starting out today, is it accurate to say that you know, one, they should go through what they think their user story is, or their user journey, and then really think about the things that add value to those users, because you're saying the likelihood of those things also driving revenue is good. Like if you're mentoring me and I just started today and I want to have the wider picture, kind of like what you guys have transitioned your metrics to. How should I go about understanding where to start and thinking about that?
That's a great
would be
question.
my process?
Yeah. So I'm actually going to take us on a little field trip, assuming this conference room is open. I want to show you something because I think it would be an awesome exercise to go through. Before we do, I'm going to tell you what this is about. So if you've ever heard of the concept of personas, personas are your key archetype of your perfect customer. And often businesses have, say 2 or 3 key personas. And you actually build a, like a fictional person, but you make it feel as real as possible. And you say, these are the people that we're serving, and this is what their journey looks like. This is why they come to our service. This is why they're interested. This is why they sign up. These are their motivations. And this is how they perceive different parts of the customer journey. And this is why they pay and why they might leave. And, this is what they eat, what they wear, whatever is relevant to your business. And we just did a really big persona study because we want to better use personas for everything that we do. And so for the past, I don't even know how many months, we've had our team, our product team, every Friday we have a bunch of members come in for interviews. And we had our team map out, and this is what anybody listening can do, create a little map or a timeline of all the different points or little milestones that people can experience in your product. I first heard about it on Facebook, or a friend told me, and then I signed up and I got a welcome email, or I got a phone call, or I got a congratulations video. And then I booked my first coaching call, whatever it may be, all those different points. And for each of you, you I think could spend a good 30, 60 minutes coming up with those. And this is what we ended up doing. If you don't have users yet or any customers, this is something that you could do on your own. If you do, you could do what I'm about to show you. So hang on a second.
Awesome. While you're walking, I'm just going to tell you something funny. So I, in the past, have used dating apps, and I tell you what, if they haven't filled out stuff about them, no matter how cute they are, it's to the left.
I know.
It's just to the left, right? And so I never really thought through why that was, but it is definitely a sense of, how committed are they to this process?
Yeah, and I think as part of that, it's the lack of vulnerability and lack of revealing causes a lot of distrust. Like if I can't trust you to say like some basic things about yourself, what are you actually going to reveal if I met you? Anyway, okay, so what I'm going to show you is a study that we've been doing, and we used it to figure out what to double down on and figure out what to fix. Okay, so this is a scale. Hold on, let me make sure that I can do this. I had no idea I was going to show this. So this is a scale, a 20-point scale that starts with like, yeah, this is the worst experience ever, to neutral, to yay. And each of these stickies is a point on the journey. And like I mentioned a moment ago. And so we have our members come in and actually plot out how they feel when they encounter one of these things. And what we've done is started to actually create a persona map or a persona database of how each of these things affect our customers. And of course, we have learnings out of that, and we create new actions from that. And so what I would urge everybody to do is, whether it's your own voting system or your customers, and then let me get more settled again. You can use this exercise to almost like objectively figure out what are the most valuable points of the customer journey, and then figure out how you can track those. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then those become your metrics.
Yes, those become the metrics, and those become the most important thing. And I'll tell you, if you try to track too many things at once, especially as a very, as a solo founder or a really small team, it can get really muddy and messy very quickly. So I would recommend only tracking 2, 3 things. Some people say only track 1 metric that matters. I think that's a little difficult, but 2 or 3 metrics that are the most important pieces, and then work on optimizing for those. And I would be willing to bet you'll see growth metrics and the other vanity metrics, as they're called, start to go up as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I love about it is that, as people are starting to think about their metrics, sometimes it can be so overwhelming to think of what it is. But what you just laid out is you were like, know your customers really well and know what actually matters to them. And then have your metrics roll off of that, and it will drive your vanity metrics. So it's like, it doesn't have to be a mystery. It doesn't have to be anything, more complex than being, really methodical about getting as close to the humans who use your products as possible, and then finding out what matters to them. It's kind of like the difference, we talked about I gave everybody Joe Edelman's article on measuring what matters. And he does this great thing where he sort of like lays out the YouTube metrics, which basically are time spent on video. And that has nothing to do with why the people were there, what they wanted, who they are. And, if you look at what, there's certain blog posts that have been written by ex-YouTube stars who talked about when that became the metric, how that, drove them to start to do things that they didn't feel very good about in terms of like what they talked about, how sensationalized they were. And so it really just made that whole platform a hot mess in terms of like what it was doing for people's psychology. And it drove off of that metric, that switched to a metric that had nothing to do with the people who were there and why they were there. And so, I love what you've laid out, because it's so clear, it's so methodical, and it's really about, getting close to the humans that you're serving.
Yeah, I think it's sad that it's, I think, quite easy to forget that we're all humans serving other humans. And the moment we forget and focus on something that, like you said, the time on site or time watching videos, it can really dehumanize the way that we run the business. I remember there was a period last year where we were just going for user growth at all costs, and we found that, we were way less sophisticated at the time, and we didn't actually have a good way to catch this. We had to realize it was a problem and then catch it and figure out ways in the future to mitigate against it. But the person who was running our paid ad campaigns was given the directive of, hit this user number every day, week, whatever, month. And she found some campaigns that were driving really cheap traffic. And we were like, awesome, our cost per registration is so low suddenly. This is so exciting. And then oddly enough, we saw revenue and other numbers start to go, and engagement metrics start to go. And we were like, what is going on? And what we realized was the group of people, or cohort of people, which is a specific age and in this case, gender, that was signing up, was basically like signing up and them not doing anything. They weren't filling out the profiles. They weren't, engaging with other people. They just were like dead weight that we had paid for and calculated into this, holy grail user number. And it ended up really biting us in the butt. And it took us, like I said, a while to figure it out. And it's such a shame. And, we all make mistakes, and this is how we learn. This is how we learned about the best ways to create this profile score metric that we now use. We wouldn't have figured that out had we not had a problem to flag it in the first place.
Cool. So in a moment, I'm going to take some questions from the from the group online. So guys, you can start to put some questions in the chat, and I'll call on you for the great questions. And so while that's happening, Amy, I have a couple of other questions for you. In terms of your team, everyone's building their teams and, growing their businesses. When you first introduced this new way of measuring and your team started talking about it, how did you introduce it to the team, or how did the team introduce it to you? And what was the buy-in process for that? Was there anyone who was like, no? Or was everyone like, yeah, that's what we want to do? What was the team process? We talked a little bit about what the investor process was, but what was the team process with that?
Yeah, and that's critical because your team is the everything behind how your business does and grows. And so getting that buy-in is so important. We're really lucky. We've hired, for the most part, like excellent culture fit teammates who are in this for the right reasons. Everybody is here in some part for the mission that we're out to, that we're doing in the world. And it was easy because of that to have people buy into doing or looking at metrics in a different way. I think for pretty much all human beings, there's gonna be some sort of, even if you're not conscious of it, like feeling, that like soul sucky feeling if you're only tracking things like revenue and growth, because we're all wired to have some deeper meaning and purpose, whether we can articulate that or not. And so I think it gives people, and it certainly did for our team, it gave people an awareness of why we were doing this, why we're showing up on a daily basis at this company as a team, why we're putting in the hours and the focus and attention, and made it more real. It brought everybody closer to our customers and the impact that we're making. And before, that's really something only certain people in product would see, and people in customer service. And so it really shifted how people thought about their work. Another thing that we do.
That's so interesting. Basically what you're saying is that not only did it make you better at serving the humans that you serve, but it enhanced your team. Oh, that's great. I'm sorry I interrupted. I just got excited.
Okay. It's okay. I'm excited you're excited. Hopefully other people are excited about that one. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, without an engaged team, like, none of this is going to work.
Yeah.
It might for a second, but it won't be sustainable. We put as much effort into our team and our culture as we do into our product. The other thing, I do want to mention another thing.
Your second point, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. So we use Slack for team communication, and it's been, for the most part, really great for us. And we also have some remote team members as well. And so Slack is where all team communication that's public goes. And we have a feedback channel that people in customer support will post snippets of customer feedback throughout the day, good and bad, and especially the success stories, which is always really fun. And that also we have a plugin that will take app reviews from the App Store and the Play Store and automatically post those in Slack as well in the feedback channel. So every single person on the team looks at the feedback channel on a daily basis, and we see our highs and our lows. And so it makes it way more real and much more grounded for people to go, oh, we just released that feature and this person's really happy about it, or man, this person's like feeling a lot of pain around this one thing, and we got to fix that. It just makes it real. And I don't know when we started doing that, but I can't imagine not doing that anymore, because unless you're actively involved in those customer conversations, without having a public forum for that kind of stuff, no one on the company is going to see it. And we're going to be working in a bubble, forgetting about what we're actually doing. Like the touch points we have with people on a daily basis will be, muted. And so that feedback channel has been huge for us. And whatever makes sense for you, in whatever way you can, getting early customer feedback, wins, things that show people's pain points. I'm actually one of those people who I'm such a positive person. I dislike putting out negative stuff, but the negative stuff is really important for everybody to see because it just kicks everyone into high gear about wanting to fix it. So in whatever way you can, I definitely recommend sharing customer feedback at whatever point your business is at with your team. And if it's just you, making sure you're looking at that absolutely on a regular basis.
Cool. Okay, so we're going to take a question from Marco Botticelli. Marco, unmute yourself, ask your question, and then you can mute yourself again.
Hi, Amy. Nice to meet you. This is Marco from London.
Hi.
So super helpful. And I love the process of the board that you use to identify your metrics. And the question I had is, how did you go about it at the very beginning? Did you ask and interview, your most active users, or was it you and your team that tried a bunch of hypotheses and placed them on the board, or you worked them back with the data because you had enough users to reach statistical significance, or anything else?
That's a great question. So early on, the way I can answer this, just how we began tracking metrics, period. They weren't, the success metrics we're talking about today, but I think it's absolutely critical to get into the habit of tracking metrics early. So I'll share that part of the journey for sure. So the makeup of our team when we started was myself and my co-founder, Adam, who is a product and design and a kind of systems operational guy. It was us two and our lead engineer, who's now our CTO. And we had this WordPress prototype. We had built a prototype using a WordPress plugin to just validate this idea, and launched it to the Yoga Dates community because I had a large database of people all in one city already to test this with. And by the way, that first prototype was embarrassingly awful, and as it should be, because if you're not embarrassed by your first product, you've waited too long. So what we did that was really smart, I remember somebody coming to me and saying, hey, we're from this company called Mixpanel, and we want to tell you how you can track your data. And we were like, we don't know what we're doing. I hated data at the time because I'm not like a details, numbers oriented person. If there's no immediate reason for it. And so I sat that rep down with Adam, and basically they decided that we were going to sign up for Mixpanel, and we were going to be able to track all the events in our service or in our product. So events are anything that a user can do, like with a click of a button. So they clicked sign in, they clicked this button, whatever. You can track whatever you want. And Mixpanel got integrated into our product early on. So we had people using it, and it wasn't a ton of people, but it was enough to create statistical significance when we did look into the numbers. But we didn't look into the numbers right away. We just kept, we were doing content marketing to grow the community in the beginning because we didn't have any money for marketing. So we would publish articles, and we had a pop-up that somebody could sign up for MeetMindful and then join the community that way. And so we started tracking all those events using Mixpanel. And then I one day was like, we need a person who can make sense of these hundreds of thousands of data points that we've collected. And so we hired our first marketing hire, was this guy named Keith, who's still over 3 years ago. Keith is still at the company. He's now VP of Finance and Operations. And he was a marketing analyst who had come from a subscription consumer company that's in our area. And so he knew about using data for sales funnel sales funnel reasons. And he also knew about subscriptions, which was really helpful on the revenue side. So we said, hi, welcome to the team. Here is all this data. Please make sense of it. And he was the one who built us our first, a look at our first sales funnel. And we finally were able to say, when 1,000 people hit our sign up page, this many people sign up, this many people fill out their profile, this many people, at the time, we just said, pay us. This many people pay us. And that, therefore, this is how much it costs for us to acquire a paying customer. Therefore, we can spend this much or more and it'll be profitable, or this much or less and it'll be profitable. So we use that early data to do early marketing tests and then decide or learn which campaigns were profitable for us. And then Keith, of course, was running this testing process of different campaigns. And that's the early growth stuff. That's how we actually began to scale our growth and use paid marketing to do that. Because most products don't have organic gangbuster growth. So understanding your metrics really early and what you can pay for a customer is really important. So that's how we went about it. If we hadn't had Keith, I don't know what on earth we would have done. Just having that person who understands data, I think is critical. And honestly, I think I wondered at the time if there was going to be enough for that person to do. There was always, we have 3 data people now in the company of 25. And Adam, my co-founder, arguably is the 4th one. So, that's I don't know what percentage that is, 4 out of 20. That's 1/6. 1 in every 6 people on this team deals with data on a daily basis, day in, day out. You need it early. So hope that answers your question.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So David Swedlow, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, yeah, I was curious if you have any kind of internal metrics for your team, for engagement within your team, and how those differ from your consumer side metrics. Specifically, I'm interested in the book An Everyone Culture by Robert Keegan looks at the deliberately developmental organization. And there's an interesting way in which the tracking of internal metrics and growth mindedness are we focused on internal growth of how our employees are growing as people. So I'm curious, do you do that as well?
I'm so glad that you asked that. It's actually was in my notes to talk about this. So thank you, David, for bringing that up. So we just hired an operations assistant who is making our lives so much easier. And one of the first things that she's focusing on the HR and team side is squarely within what you talked about. So we sent out our first morale survey last month, and we're going to be doing monthly surveys where on a scale of 1 to 10, rate how happy you are at MeetMindful. And so that went out, and we're going to be tracking those numbers. I'm just thinking about actual metrics first. That is one. And then also in our one-on-ones, most managers are asking something akin to the NPS survey, which is, oh my gosh, what does NPS stand for?
Net Promoter Score.
Thank you. I don't know why I blanked on that. Net Promoter Score for our employees. And so the question managers are asking is how much or how likely would you be to recommend working at MeetMindful to a friend or colleague? And we've had some fun with using that as well in one-on-ones. We are about to start using the method for hiring and scorecarding from Brad Smart from the book Who. And that's something that we'll be implementing this quarter onward, which will have scorecard metrics for our employees to track how they're doing against their goals. And those will be largely not just, execution related goals, but professional development goals. Things that are not as easily quantifiable, David, that we also do. We have monthly lunch and learns where the team comes together for a casual lunch and learns about either a topic on the business for example, going through the financial model and understanding how the financial model works, going through the new personas that were just created that I was talking about earlier, and having a presentation on the personas and how we're planning to use them. So the entire team is up to speed on these big drivers of the business. We're also including in those lunch and learns personal stuff too. So one of our employees makes kombucha at home and he brings it into the office every week, which is awesome. So he's going to do a kombucha making lunch and learn. I'm going to do something, and it's more work related, but on how to escape email hell, because I think we all can relate to what that looks like. And we want our employees to be happier, healthier, and more productive. So these lunch and learns are happening as well. We have a book club that is about personal growth and development. And so we're taking people through a book club every month, and there's prompts and questions to help people track their progress and understanding and integration of the material in the books. And we try to keep them fun and not too like work seeming, but they still have a lot of parallels that you can bring into your professional life. And then the last thing I'll say is on the team side, again, this is not a hard metric that we track, but I think it's definitely worth mentioning. Nicole and I have spoken a lot about this. Our team has all gone through conscious leadership training. Conscious Leadership Group is based out of the Bay Area, and we are gifted to have one of their facilitators here in Colorado, who's a dear friend and mentor of mine. And Keith and I went to the Conscious Leadership Camp, which is a 3-day workshop camp, last summer of 2017. And we were like, whoa, this is fully within our company values. It is absolutely based on mindfulness and self-awareness and growth mindset. And we need to send everybody to camp. So we sent the entire team to this conscious leadership training. And as many of you know who have done personal growth work, going to a retreat or a workshop for whatever period of time is not enough. You need the ongoing touch points to integrate it into your life. And so we have conscious leadership conversations every other Friday in our company retros, and introduce a new concept, which they call commitments. So introduce one of the new commitments, and I guess it wouldn't be a new commitment, but we're exploring or practicing a certain commitment for 2 weeks. And then we'll post in Slack like a video related to that. And then we'll remind people in our meetings about that specific commitment that we're practicing. And so we try to keep it a regular part of the conversation so people can really begin to integrate and internalize the conscious leadership work. So I know that wasn't all the question, I didn't say everything that you asked, but it reminded me that these things are really important, and you can't quantify everything. One of the reasons you can quantify so much with your product is that it's digital, and most likely it's digital. So if you have a digital product, you can easily track those data points. But when you're talking about humans working in a room together, short of tracking their computer usage, which we don't do, it's really hard to digitally track this sort of stuff. So that survey is the best thing that we've done so far, and the other stuff feels more qualitative.
Cool. Since we only have a few minutes left, I'm going to ask some of the questions, or actually, I'll ask some of the questions. So Amy asks, does being on MeetMindful help people become more mindful? And do people have a mindfulness score?
That's a great question. So from my experience in talking to our members and also in the feedback channel that I just talked about, what we see the most of is not like, this is a place that I've discovered how to be more mindful, specifically using the app, but it's a good reminder. And I think that's what we need more than anything, is the reminders to practice and the reminders to slow down. We have something in the new app that we released, that I mentioned, that we released earlier this year, that in between each profile, we have like a pause moment to remind yourself to slow down, reflect on the profile, and not be in major swiping mode.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. Like, reflect on what you just read as opposed to yes, yes, no, no, yes, yes, no, no.
Yeah.
That's
The funny thing is, like, half the people really love it and half the people really hate it. And they're like, don't tell me how to do things and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, you know, that's the call that we have to make. Like, what values and what do we really want to put out to the world about what's important to remind ourselves of? So I would definitely say it feels like more of a reminder than a teaching of mindfulness. That said, I mentioned that we started doing a lot of content early on for our first means of acquiring new people. And we still publish new content on a regular basis. We have over 2,000 original content pieces, and it's pretty much all text-based content right now, although we will be moving on to other types of content very shortly. And so if you go into our articles section on MeetMindful.com, there is a host of amazing content from experts and authors all over, and coaches and therapists all over the world. And that content, we've gotten a lot of feedback from people saying, thank you for putting this out there. It's largely based on how to be more mindful and self-aware in dating and relationships. And we've gotten feedback from people that some of those things, you know, right message at the right time, thank you so much. And people actually often will stick around just to, even if they're in a relationship, just to continue to get the content, because it's just a different, they don't see that type of content out there that often. So we're really proud of that as well.
Cool. Ella asks, can you use discovery calls in order to do the personas, or is it something that they need to be done in person?
I absolutely think that you can do phone calls. I would suggest that video is better because you're able to see facial cues and just reactions that you might not normally see on the phone. And you can also have somebody sitting next to you that is recording information or recording what they heard. So you, as the interviewer, can be fully present. That's been a really big practice that's been helpful for us. Yeah, and you can also do surveys. I mean, don't be afraid to ask. I would say don't be afraid to, if you have a lot of people that you can reach out to, also augment your one-on-one interviews with larger surveys.
Cool. And then one last question. In the last 3 minutes that we have, could you share some words of encouragement with the group? You know, they're all just, most of them are, as I said, seed or pre-seed. And, you know, as someone who's done it, could you just sort of share your journey with everybody?
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're, sorry, I accidentally muted you. Okay.
So a few things that come to mind. The first is, I think all of us here are in the business of creating change and transformation in the world. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And that type of mentality and that you know, deep drive means that what you're signing up for, or what you've signed up for, is a marathon, not a sprint. And this is something that even if you want to sell your company one day or have an exit, don't let that be the mentality that drives you. Let the impact and the work that you're doing in the world be what drives you. Because like I said earlier, the growth and the vanity metrics get stale, and you need something to get you up every day. And so just really getting clear with the fact that this is a marathon, not a sprint, has helped me a lot. And, you know, it's the journey, right? Not the destination. As cliche as that sounds, it's absolutely true. The personal growth, as I imagine many of you are on your own personal growth path, the personal growth that I've experienced and the expansion I've experienced as a human being from running a company is, I would venture to say, far and beyond greater than any personal studying and personal practice that I've done. I guess maybe with the exception of meditation, but there is so much like meat on the bone and like juicy experiences to have as an entrepreneur, and use that to fuel your own personal growth. And it doesn't have to be this work and personal life BS balance that we're all talking about. I think really embrace this as an opportunity to grow and expand. And then the last thing I'll say is that looking, and like we were talking about tracking the right metrics, it usually means solving harder problems. It's really easy to pay for user growth. It's really easy to optimize for revenue at all costs. It's harder to solve the problems that really matter. And I think as entrepreneurs, we are driven to solve hard challenges. And so just remember that when you're, hitting your head against the table on how to get that metric up or how to define it or how to track it, that, the harder problems to solve are the ones that are most fulfilling for us. And, everybody started from the place that you're at. So, one last thing I would say, I've learned this from a coaching program that I'm involved with, always measure backwards and don't think about the gap between where you are and where you want to go. Think about where you are and where you've been and how much you've gotten done. Write that stuff down on a daily basis and use that to build your confidence for the journey ahead.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, a mentor of mine calls, he has a class called Entrepreneurship as a Spiritual Path. That it is the hero's journey. And if you think of it that way, then it makes, what the hard times when we go through them, it makes them a little bit easier. Okay, well, I appreciate you so much. Everybody, I'm going to unmute you all so you can say goodbye to Amy. Okay, so doing it right now.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
Thanks from Canada.
All right, goodbye.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.